You're listening to today's inspirational message on the Proverbs with Bjorklund.
Proverbs 5, again, continuing with this theme of the adulteress. And it almost, from a overall standpoint, seems as if this is so over the top to have chapter 5, 7, part of chapter 6, a call in chapter 2 about this. But again, I just want to say that I have seen more and more people experience deep pain around this issue of their lives. And I know that we live, again, in a culture that wants to say that we can love anyone we want to love. Yet, when it comes to the idea of cheating, even people who don't acknowledge God know that it's bad form to cheat on somebody or to kind of play with this whole area of your life, and that it leaves a stain on your life. And yet smart people, spiritual people, do it all the time. And certainly God's grace is great and can restore what is broken, but often the pain and difficulty of these situations or the disaster that comes from it are really harsh. So resolve early in life that the only sexual partner you will have is with the person that you're married to. Not the person you plan to marry, not the person you were married to, not the person that you're married to in your heart, because that's not even a thing. The consequences of sex outside of marriage will ultimately outweigh the pleasure. And so today I want to just point out a couple of things that we see in the text about the consequences that are very specific. First, there are emotional consequences. We see this in Proverbs 5, verses 14 through 15. And that is, you know that you did something foolish and that this will cost you more than you wanted to pay. You may find it truly hard to bond with your spouse because you have been somewhat loose in your sexuality in the past, or you'll have some experience that makes it harder for you to really believe that that you can be in an intimate, loving relationship. And so that's one consequence. It's harder to drink water from your own cistern, as this text says in verse 15. Secondly, there's social consequences. It says, I'm on the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. And in our current culture, this may apply more to adultery than anything else, but there's the consequence of even potentially missing out on a great spouse or date because somebody else has observed your loose behavior. I was listening to a podcast where these guys do what they call life advice. And it's interesting because they do life advice and they're totally secular guys. It's a sports podcast and it's just a tag on. And they were talking the other day as I was listening to it about how when a guy has been, as they said, a bit of a dog, chasing all kinds of girls around, women around, how they don't want him to date their sister and how that really does ostracize somebody. And there's also here a possibility of revenge from the offended party, chapter 6, verse 34, 35, and so on, or 24, 25. And then there's physical consequences. This is implied by the ox going to slaughter in chapter 5, verse 11. And this is also potentially a reference to a sexually transmitted disease. This is from a note in the Jewish Study Bible that says that this is what that's about. And there's certainly financial consequences. Proverbs chapter 5, verses 9 and 10 indicate this idea where it talks about giving your honor to others and your years to the merciless. Strangers will take their fill of your strength and your labors will go to the house of a foreigner. Sometimes when we cheat, we end up losing a lot of things that we have. And then there's spiritual consequences. Whenever we turn our back on the revealed word of God, there's a spiritual price. And again, it's known and certain that there's grace, and it's impossible to out-sin the cross. And it's impossible at the same time as it is to out-sin the cross to have a deep and growing relationship with God without surrendering to Him and His ways. And these references that talk about going down to the way of Sheol and away from life are evidence of this ultimate cost. And so today I just want to remind you again of the consequences of a sexual indiscretion and remind you that ultimately they will outweigh any of the pleasures that you think will be found there.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.